When American forces surged into the European theater, they faced a terrifying mechanical reality that their doctrine hadn't fully anticipated. The German Panzerwaffe wasn't just an obstacle. Names like the Tiger and Panther became the stuff of nightmares for Allied tank crews. To hunt these heavy steel beasts, the US Army didn't just rely on standard tanks. They developed a specialized, aggressive breed of machine designed solely for the kill. Let's explore these steel machines, starting with the doctrine's humble beginnings. M3 37mm anti-tank gun. We begin with the foundational piece of the specialized anti-tank battalions, the M3 37mm anti-tank gun. Before the heavy armor arrived, this small towed cannon was the primary answer to enemy tanks, meant to be towed by jeeps and positioned by infantry for ambushes. Technically, it sported a 37mm M3 barrel, capable of firing armor-piercing shells at a high velocity, which was sufficient against early German light tanks and armored cars in 1941 and 1942. However, by the time it reached the thick hedgerows of Normandy, it was woefully underpowered, with soldiers grimly nicknaming it the pop gun, as its shells bounced harmlessly off the frontal armor of most German panzers, relegating it to canister shot duty against infantry. Recognizing the need for mobility, the Army quickly moved to mount these guns on vehicles. 6-gun motor carriage, the Fargo. The urgent need for mobile firepower led to the creation of the M6-gun motor carriage, often referred to by the troops as the Fargo. This vehicle essentially took the existing 37mm gun and mounted it onto the bed of a 3-4-ton Dodge WC-52 truck, creating one of the war's first improvised tank destroyers. It retained the standard Dodge engine and unarmored chassis, which allowed it to redeploy faster than a towed crew, but it offered absolutely no protection for the gunners exposed in the back. While it saw service in North Africa and the very early stages of the European campaigns, the M6 was a doctrinal failure. It was too flimsy to fight tanks and too lightly armed to kill them, leading to its rapid withdrawal from frontline service. But the concept of a self-propelled gun stuck, and the engineers decided they needed a sturdier platform than a Dodge truck. M3 gun motor carriage, the 75mm half-track. Stepping up in firepower, the Army introduced the M3 gun motor carriage, a marriage between the reliable M3 half-track and the famous French 75mm field gun. This was a stopgap measure that placed a heavy, bunker-busting Model 1897 A4 cannon above the driver's cab, giving U.S. forces a weapon that could actually crack German medium armor at respectable ranges. It utilized the standard white 160AX engine, giving it decent cross-country performance, though the gun shield provided only minimal cover for the crew. Despite being intended as a temporary fix, the M3 GMC proved surprisingly effective in the invasion of Italy and continued to serve in the Pacific, famously proving that a big gun on a half-track was better than no gun at all. While half-tracks were useful, the Army needed a dedicated, fully tracked hunter. This led to the most produced tank destroyer of the war, M10 gun motor carriage, the Wolverine. The backbone of the U.S. tank destroyer force was undoubtedly the M10 gun motor carriage, unofficially known to the British, and later history, as the Wolverine. Built on a modified Sherman chassis, it featured a unique, open-topped pentagonal turret housing a potent 3-inch M7 gun, which offered significantly better penetration than the standard Sherman's 75mm. It was powered by a twin diesel GM 6246 engine setup, giving it reliability and torque, but its open top left crews vulnerable to artillery, grenades, and even snipers. Despite this vulnerability and a slow-turning turret that required hand cranking, the M10 remained the most widely used U.S. tank destroyer in Europe, serving as the primary answer to the Panzer IV from D-Day until the end of the war. But the M10 wasn't just used by Americans. Our allies modified it into something even deadlier. The Achilles, British 17-pounder M10. While technically a British modification, no discussion of ETO tank destroyers is complete without the Achilles, the British rework of the Lend-Lease M10. Identifying that the American 3-inch guns struggled against the Tigers and Panthers encountered in Normandy, the Royal Artillery swapped it for their legendary Ordnance QF 17-pounder anti-tank gun. You can distinguish this vehicle by the long barrel with a counterweight near the muzzle brake, a visual cue of its devastating high-velocity capability. The Achilles was one of the few Allied vehicles capable of destroying a Tiger Lefroy from the front at combat ranges, making it an invaluable asset to the joint Allied push through France and the Low Countries. While the tracked vehicles garnered the glory, the doctrine still relied heavily on towed guns that were dragged across Europe. M5 3-inch anti-tank gun serving? Alongside the Wolverine was its ballistic twin, the M5 3-inch anti-tank gun, a massive towed piece of artillery that became the standard heavy issue for tank destroyer battalions. Created by combining the barrel of an anti-aircraft gun with the breech and recoil mechanism of a howitzer, it fired a heavy 15-pound projectile capable of knocking out most German medium tanks. However, its sheer weight was a tactical nightmare. Weighing over 5,000 pounds, it could not be moved by its crew alone and required a truck or half-track to reposition. This lack of mobility meant that once an M5 crew opened fire, they were committed to the fight, leading to high casualty rates when German tanks flanked their fixed positions. The doctrine eventually called for something faster, a vehicle that could race to a breakthrough and ambush the enemy. The result was a legend: M18 gun motor carriage, the Hellcat. Perhaps the most iconic vehicle of the branch was the M18 gun motor carriage, universally known as the Hellcat. Unlike the M10, this was not a modified tank chassis, but a purpose-built speed demon, holding the record as the fastest tracked armored vehicle of World War II, with speeds reaching 55 miles per hour. Armed with the 76mm M1 gun and protected by paper-thin armor, less than an inch thick in places, the Hellcat relied entirely on its speed and maneuverability to flank heavier German cats like the Panther. While its light armor terrified crews, its ability to shoot and scoot made it the most effective tank destroyer in the US inventory based on kill-to-loss ratios, perfectly embodying the hit hard and run fast doctrine. While the Hellcat offered speed, the infantry often had to make do with something smaller and more abundant: M1 57mm anti-tank gun. As the war progressed into 1944, the smaller M1 57mm anti-tank gun became a ubiquitous sight, replacing the obsolete 37mm in infantry regiments. A direct copy of the British 6-pounder, this gun was light enough to be manhandled by its crew, but packed enough punch with specialized APDS, sabot ammunition, to threaten the sides of German heavy tanks. It featured a long, narrow barrel and a distinct curved shield, becoming the standard tactical anti-tank weapon for airborne troops and gliders during Operation Market Garden. Despite its utility, it struggled against the frontal armor of late-war German behemoths, often forcing crews to wait until the enemy was dangerously close to ensure a penetrating hit. But by late 1944, neither the 76mm nor the 57mm were enough. The Americans needed a gun that could punch through anything. M36 gun motor carriage, the Jackson. The answer to the heavy German cats finally arrived in the form of the M36 gun motor carriage, often referred to as the Jackson. This vehicle solved the firepower problem by mounting a massive 90mm M3 gun, originally an anti-aircraft weapon, onto a modified M10A1 chassis with a new, larger turret. This was the only American vehicle in the ETO capable of destroying a Tiger or Panther from long range frontally, finally putting US crews on equal footing with the Wehrmacht's best. While it still retained the open-top vulnerability of its predecessors, the M36 was beloved by crews during the Battle of the Bulge, where its ability to crack heavy armor at over 1,000 yards proved decisive in stopping the German counteroffensive. As production of the M36 ramped up, shortages in chassis led to a unique hybrid appearing on the front lines: M36B1, the Sherman hybrid. A rare but significant variant you might spot in archival footage is the M36B1. Because the factories couldn't produce enough dedicated tank destroyer chassis to meet the demand for the 90mm turret, the Army improvised by mounting the complete M36 turret directly onto standard M4A3 Sherman tank hulls. This created a vehicle with the superior hull armor and mobility of a Sherman, but the devastating punch of the 90mm Jackson. Only roughly 187 of these were built, seeing intense combat in the drive toward Germany, offering a unique blend of tank durability and tank destroyer firepower that hinted at the future main battle tank concept. The evolution continued even as the war closed, with final variants attempting to fix the open-top issue. M36B2, the diesel upgrade. The final operational evolution of this line in the ETO was the M36B2. As the supply of the gasoline-powered chassis dried up, the Army reverted to the M10 diesel hulls, fitting them with the 90mm turrets and, crucially, adding a light-armored roof kit to protect the crew from shrapnel and grenades. While visually similar to the standard Jackson, these diesel variants were louder and smokier, But the addition of the roof marked a tacit admission that the open-top doctrine was flawed. These late war models saw action in the final months of the assault on Germany and would go on to serve for decades in other conflicts, proving the enduring value of the 90mm gun. T-28 Super Heavy Tank, the Doom Turtle. We conclude with a monster that represents the absolute extreme of American engineering, the T-28 Super Heavy Tank. Originally designated as the T-95 gun motor carriage, this 95-ton behemoth was designed specifically to break the Siegfried line. Armed with a 100mm cannon mounted in a fixed casemate heavily inspired by German Jagd tanks. It featured 4 tracks, 2 on each side, and up to 12 inches of frontal armor, making it impervious to almost any German gun. While only 2 prototypes were built and they never fired a shot in anger in Europe due to the war ending, the T-28 remains the ultimate what-if of the tank destroyer branch. A steel fortress designed to crush everything in its path. From the improvised guns on Dodge trucks to the 90mm powerhouses that cracked the Siegfried line, American tank destroyers were a vital, if sometimes flawed, experiment in warfare. They proved that speed and firepower could win battles, but the cost in crew safety was often high.